Hey guys, it's Josie with Queen My Pawn, and I'll be discussing a question that I got from a Lichess user. So, Matron Bloody Cawthon wants to know, Hi, I saw your post in the forums offering to analyze the game. Could you please take a look at this one? Absolutely. He continues to say, I think I had a decent position, but then didn't know what to do and messed up. Thanks. Yeah, that happens way more often than you think. It's like when you have an attacking position and they defend well, now it's like, what do I do now? Well, games from Masters and studies of games of Masters have shown that you just need to improve your position by making safe moves, like maybe giving your king some luft, some space in the back rank, so that any back rank checkmates are avoided. Basically, improving the safety of your own position and waiting for your opponent themselves to make a mistake, and that works effectively because then they themselves are asking, "Oh, what do I do now?" and they won't know, and they'll try to attack because they think that that safe move is like a waste of time. So then they're like, oh, let me go on the attack. So let's go ahead and take a look at the position that you gave me. Okay, this will be an interesting game. And in this game you were black, so it'll basically be like that. And let's go ahead and take a look. So e4, e5, knight f3, knight f6. Okay, the Petrov defense. Knight takes e5. I'm gonna say that d6 is the right move here. Knight to f3. Knight takes e4. d4, d5. Bishop d3, bishop d6. Castles, c4. So he's already putting some pressure on the light squares. You back it up with c6, which is excellent. Knight c3 in this position. Knight takes c3, and then d takes c4, so that you can basically hold these two pawns with this c6 pawn. You move a knight to f6 and then control d5 and prevent the advance, and probably h6 first so that this pin doesn't get annoying. So knight takes c3, perfect. B takes c3, d takes c4, bishop takes c4, bishop f5. Personally, I'm a fan of bringing out the knight to f6, as I already mentioned. But the book moves say that bishop g4 is the strongest one to pin this knight, which could control e5. This bishop f5 move isn't too bad either because it prevents rook to b8, but it also leaves this square undefended. So I'm just a fan of knights before bishops, and that could be an alternative option if you decide to pursue it. So bishop f5, bishop to g5. Okay, I mean, it's bringing out a new piece, so whatever. Queen to a5. Okay, so you're attacking something on the queen side, which is okay. And you're kind of eyeing the bishop here somewhat. So, at the same time, I kind of prefer queen to c7, where the queen cannot be attacked by a rook. And also, if you move queen to a5, the bishop can come here at some point and attack your queen with the discovered pawn push. Let's see what happens. So, queen to d2, which is weird. b5, bishop to d3. And personally, I would play bishop to e6 to control this square. So that way I have time to move the knight there. Let's see what you played. You took the bishop, which isn't necessary. You know, you want to keep the tension. You have somewhat more queenside space, so I would definitely move the bishop here. At the same time, this bishop is attacking your king side, so your move isn't a bad one. And it's all up to a matter of taste. So you prefer the more quiet option. So queen takes d3 after bishop takes d3. Knight to d7, you get the knight out, which is good. Now he's preparing a discovered attack. So you can actually counterattack by moving queen to c7, and the knight can't move. So it's basically glued there. But he's also threatening to push here and get some queenside space. And you also can't move the knight here anymore because your queen would not only be kind of out of retreat squares, but also after c4, c5 you get forked. This is a bit too aggressive in my opinion. You want to hold c4 and block his bishop because these pawns are being obstructive to his own bishop. So you want to make sure that you play something like knight to b6 as soon as possible by preparing it with queen to c7. Okay, that's why I thought this move was more accurately better. Like, people will try to place pieces where they attack something at once, and it could be okay, but instead more flexible moves like queen to c7 just make more sense. And Lasker would do this all the time. He would play more flexible moves, and his opponents would be like, oh, why'd you do that? But in the end, it's obvious. The queen was there just waiting for like 10 or 20 moves to come into the game. So yeah, that's the thing. After b4, he gets the middle pawns. And now he can create a passer. So rook to b8, that is not a passed pawn, so putting this behind a pawn that's not passed is obstructing it, and you don't actually want to do that. So let's see what else you can do. Knight to g5. Well, before that, I want to say that in this position, you want to get the queen over here to the king side, and now you're eyeing h2, and maybe knight to f6 and g5. But you also want to control the central file as well. But this move is definitely called for. Doesn't matter if you lose a pawn here. That's why I prefer to keep the pawn here in the first place, to also prevent the queen from going to c4. But at this point, you have some compensation, like for example, the knight on f6 go here, followed by a knight move there. You have a lot of possibilities. So rook to b8 isn't an active move at all, and I prefer active moves that attack something. So knight to g5. So he's moving a piece where he's expecting you to do something like g6, and this square is weak. You don't have to do any of that, just play knight to f6. Which you did, good job. c5, and now the queen is chopped off, so that's the point. And now look, when the rook is on b8, it's blocked off by its own rook, the bishop. Normally you would move the bishop back to b8, but you can't even do that here. So that's why rook to d8 was better than rook to b8. So let's go back to that position briefly. Definitely rook to b8 if anything, okay? I still prefer this move, but rook to b8, rook to d8 is way more active. But it all started from this. You don't want to push this pawn up, releasing the tension here. More or less, this is more like the middle at this point. But you want to put a rook here and control this open file as well. And it's all about the c4 square. So let's go to the position. I don't know why it says it's a blunder. I genuinely don't understand. So this is not a good move because you're doubling up your own A pawns, and although you get an open file, your endgame is a bit poor because these pawns are weak, and they can become easy targets for the dark squared bishop, especially this one, the one that ends up being on a3. That's not a good move at the moment. He probably could have developed the rook here at least, and then bishop to a3. So again, this isn't a threat. You have to play something like knight to d5 where it can access a lot more squares from the middle. It's all about the center. This is a stepping stone to greater heights and places. And let's see now. f6 automatically. f6, because this prevents the knight from going here, and it prevents the bishop from even attacking. Maybe you say, oh, but that's a weakness. Well, it's not a weakness because there's no queen or light squared bishop that can attack you through this diagonal. So it's actually perfect. So the bishop goes back to d2. Okay, you put a rook on b2. That's a strong move. Now you support that rook after rook to b1, rook fb1, rook db8. But again, this would have happened if you got played f6 instead. You move the rook there, but it's starting to look a little bit weird how he can get over here now. You have to play f6 now, which you did, good job. So you have to play this move now to defend the 7th file. Remember, the 7th rank. If you let him come into the 7th rank, it's gonna be a bad day for you, and then you can allow yourself to move to f7. Okay, you played. That's not a good move. That's an even worse move. He could have just done this. Okay, and he at least wins that pawn. I can't believe he was worried about this a2 pawn. Okay, so that's highly inaccurate, and that allows you to come in, which is not what you did. Instead, you did this, which doesn't make any sense. You need to put a rook on the 7th rank. I'm gonna make a video where I talk about. Okay, here's a sneak peek. Okay, I put a rook on the 7th rank, and based on the ideas in a master game, which I cannot say yet because it's gonna spoil everything, I'm able to win the game. So I would say that the things that you can improve on so far without even getting to the end of the game is putting a rook on the 7th rank, and making sure that you use the center as a stepping stone, because he's blocked right here. You have to block his bishop. That's why I was putting so much emphasis on blocking c4, because then the pawns can advance, and this pawn on c3 becomes a target. Let's see why you lost the game. I kind of feel like there's a tactic. Maybe you can win a pawn here, or here. Actually, yeah, that wins a pawn. Or maybe you can't win a pawn here. Oh, here you go. You can win a pawn here because this is forked. But then he goes there, so I don't think there's anything. Let's see. Oh yeah. You traded down to a pawn endgame when you had one pawn less. That's never gonna work out. In pawn endings, the side with the more pawns wins unless there's like some tactic or some positional like stronghold that you have. Neither of which you have. His king is too active, more than yours for sure, and he's got more center pawns, and his king can just, you know, he can just penetrate to your position, at least go through here, and win that pawn and create a passer. This pawn's gonna get passed. Let's see what happens. Yeah, that was your chance to basically enter and at least attack this pawn. That was definitely the move, and maybe create a passer of your own. He hesitated. Instead, he should have played this move. But yeah, now you can't even get in there. Yep, just like I guessed. There's nothing to do, right? Don't trade down into a pawn ending when you have either less pawns, a worse king position, and no tactical breakthroughs. So that was a good game though, and we learned a lot from that game, and I hope you did too. So if you liked the video, make sure to give the video a like by clicking the thumbs up button. Subscribe to my content for more videos like this, and I'll see you on the next one.